Since 2019, the Liberals and Conservatives have been in a virtual logjam. Oh, they're locked right in. But this is the first time that the Ipsos polling has shown either side being able to break out. Break out. Trudeau's good at that. He said the poll was reflecting fatigue with the Liberal government more so than growing support for the Conservatives. Duh! I keep saying that. People will vote one or the other just because they despise the other, not on any basis of policy or beliefs. It goes on to say people are really not happy with the direction of the country at the moment. And they lay a lot of the blame for that right now at the Trudeau administration. So I think that less than Poilievre actually attracting a lot of people, it's really people taking a look because they're really not satisfied with the current situation with the federal government. Support for the new Democratic Party led by Jagmeet Sing also appears to have waned, with 16% of the respondents saying they would vote NDP, a drop of 2 points. Well, it's not just a drop of 2 points. See how much the NDP have dropped in the last 10 years, last decade. See how much they've dropped. And the Liberals, Conservatives, same old shit show every time. We could call it changing of the guards, but it's not changing of the guards because we're getting the same shit. It doesn't matter if you put Liberal or Conservative in. Man, today I was listening to Doug Ford trying to explain why Ontario is having such a housing crunch. Imagine, they want to build 1.5 million houses in Ontario, the government, and I guess they're helping Conservative supporters or entities in Ontario with, $8 billion worth of contracts. It's just a crazy shit show. You cannot get away from plain, ordinary, liberal, conservative, even Democrat parties being influenced by big money. Big money. Doug Ford needs the dough, so he's going to support whatever the developers want. You know, he doesn't give a shit about people. And talking about giving a shit about people, he's talking about how much Toronto's population is growing, or Ontario's, 600,000, 500,000 a year, because of immigration. Holy shit! Why won't somebody have enough balls to say, put a freeze on it? Canadians are not doing as well as said. We gotta freeze immigration right now and make sure every Canadian can have an affordable house, not because the government builds it out of other taxpayers' money, but because that's how the economy is. Build affordable housing, but not with taxpayers' money, you stupid bunch of whatever's in government, because they don't have money of their own. They either borrow it, print it, take it from you, but it's not their money. They're using your money to do whatever the hell they want, and all people can seem to think of is, let's get rid of Trudeau because, Pierre is going to be much better with the Conservatives. Or maybe he's not, but he's different. And, by the way, with all these 1.5 million houses to be built in 10 years, that's 150,000 houses a year. Holy shit, is that gonna add to the infrastructure? Roads, water, electricity, heating, gas, oil, whatever the hell. Schools, hospitals, it's gonna add to everything. It's like, give me a break. And how much of those 1.5 million houses to be built are aimed for the immigrants? and how much are aimed at young Canadians wanting to start their life, have a family, have a home to call their own? It's not talked about. We're just going to build low-income housing because there's a lot of people. Hey, be happy. The same shit's happened in the States. And then you wonder why some outsider, a populist like Donald Trump, gets support.
Extreme socialism, obviously, we'll all agree, communism doesn't work.
Yeah.
But extreme capitalism, as we're seeing right now,
does not
with
work.
this corporate capitalism, also has its problems.
How much money is too much money for one person?
It's a tough call. I know. When they have these billions, you're like, well, they really don't need it. Yeah, we agree with that.
Why Trump instead of Bernie Sanders?
What I look at is more progressives like the Bernie Sanders faction, stuff like that. We actually see a lot of the same problems.
And I would vote for a Bernie Sanders before I'd vote for like a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio.
What would it have taken for you guys to not go into the rally and to instead get ice cream with me, a flaming leftist?
Well, first of all, you'd
I'd
have
be
to
happy.
buy.
All right, I'm buying. We are polarized. There is no doubt about it. But I came to this Trump rally on a hunch. I've poured drinks at a Rust Belt dive bar for the last year, and when your county votes for Trump and the bartender looks like I do, people kind of assume that you're on the same page. But sometimes you actually are. So here's my hunch. For all the focus on culture war issues, the working class on the left and the right have a lot more in common than we're led to believe. And if that's true, it could and should have huge implications for the upcoming presidential election. So I went to Erie, Pennsylvania to find out. Are we rolling? Okay. We're here at the Trump rally today. Why did you come out today?
To support my 45th president. He didn't lose. He called out the Washington establishment, and I absolutely loved it.
You know, he's definitely not a Republican because Mitch McConnell and them would be backing him and DeSantis would be running against him. Obviously not a Democrat no more. So we're more of a politically homeless faction that loves America and will make all the changes that we can to make it great.
Prices are just higher. Like, you go to the grocery store,
Yeah.
I buy the same thing every time I go to the grocery store. I spend $102 at Aldi's. I was just telling my uncle this.
Yeah.
I'm spending over $200 now.
Yeah.
So things are more expensive. I think people are more scared.
Our money doesn't have no value, and that's why we're having problems. This whole inflation thing, it's been building and building for multi-decades, and it's getting close now.
You work at McDonald's, right?
I do.
Do you feel like you're getting everything out of work that you're putting into it?
I believe I should get paid more. All I am doing is I'm working my ass off to get my money. I'm a hard worker and I feel like I deserve more.
I work down in West Virginia.
Yes.
Yep, on the rigs for evil Big Red, Halliburton.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Halliburton, we were 2 weeks on, 1 week off, so you never got to go home. We were the lowest paid of all the workers out there. I only made $13.50 when I got hired on.
For Halliburton.
For Halliburton, yep. Probably wouldn't even have an Iraq war if it wouldn't have been for the Halliburton and Cheney and stuff. We were expendable, that's all it was. Halliburton, Big Red, they called it. You're just part of the machine and the machine can be replaced.
As expendable as, people who went over to fight a rich person's war in Iraq.
Yep, pretty much.
5 years ago, I came to the realization that I've been hoodwinked. I have zero respect for Dick Cheney. I have zero respect for George Bush.
What did it for you there, and why did you end up going towards Trump?
It was a lie.
And this
they
might
they
sound
lied
stupid.
about the Iraq war. There was no reason for us to go into war in Iraq other than the military-industrial complex
It's just a conspiracy
wanted
theory,
a war.
too,
The global corporations, do they have, the Goldilocks question: too much, just enough, or too little power? Where would you
I feel like
place
their
it?
only thought is more money,
Right.
more power. That's all you care. Whoever has the most money.
Obviously, it's too much.
Yep.
When you have a company like BlackRock that's worth $9 trillion,
And Vanguard's what?
Vanguard's $8 trillion. Obviously, I'm not going to argue. There's a problem with that.
Do you think the finance sector, does it have too much power, just the right amount of power, not enough power?
Way too much power.
The financial sector.
100%. Yes. These people really, a lot of these people they don't realize are unelected officials. So all these politicians have this plan for how they're going to fix the economy, but then they just get in there, they don't do anything, and they're funded by the people, and those people are not elected, and they control the people that are elected.
What role do you think, the consolidation of these larger corporations? I came from an agricultural background, and now it'll be 3 or 4 companies that control the entire market for chicken, for eggs, for beef.
That shouldn't happen.
Yeah. The working class has gotten beaten up because of the loss of small businesses. And my question would be, I would say, why aren't they here anymore?
As a small business owner, I feel like we aren't represented that much in America.
Do you see a problem with that kind of operation?
Oh, 100%.
When it's concentrated.
Because the big guys are beating out the small guys, or even the family-owned businesses, easily.
A lot of that's driven by these really large corporations that are, just by their size, pushing the little guy out.
Yes.
How big of a problem do you think that is?
That's an ultimate problem. That reminds you of watching them westerns, movies when they would go to some small town and the one guy owns the bar, he owns the tack place, he owns that. Yes, there's so many houses for sale in our neighborhood. I was going to go to town and say, are these all, can we find out, are these just real people buying them, or is this like proxies? See, BlackRock proxies, Vanguard proxies. Are they buying all these homes so people can't own them and they're just going to rent them?
Would you be excited if Trump did anything to rein in?
Well, of course. It's just...
It's a monopoly that needs to be broken up. Just like, remember the telephone company in the 80s, AT&T? That was broken up.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to be done.
Capitalism's not the problem. It's been corrupted to such a level, just like people think all the politicians are corrupted. But it's corrupted at the highest levels of these corporations, like you said, being owned. Instead of 200 of them, you're down to 4. Yeah. That's massive control.
You think somebody like Trump...
So, what do you think? This is just a random selection of people at the Pennsylvania rally held just a little while ago. A week ago or whatever. Not long ago. And do these supporters of Trump sound like what you have heard them to be portrayed by fake, corrupt news media? Oh, they're just hicks. They got teeth missing. They can't spell. Oh, they're inbred, hillbillies, uneducated. Oh, God. The educated people in cities vote for... In the States, it's Democrats, and in Canada, it's Liberals, because they like the liberal policies. Oh, my God. But, when I listen to this, and there's more, I'm not going to play the whole thing, it's all the same. People feel the hurt, they're feeling the pain, they want something done, and the tried and true methods before, banging your head against the wall with 2 parties in the U.S., Democrat, Republican, in Canada, liberal, conservative, it's the same thing. It's not changing anything, just prolonging the suffering of working people.
I heard from families that were living in their vehicles because they'd lost their jobs. I heard from people that had lost their jobs and lost everything. I have the tears of thousands of Canadians on my shoulder who every day told me that we were bringing them hope.
Lich added that the goal was never to upset Ottawa residents. She is facing criminal charges for her role in the Freedom Convoy. Day 16 also revealing infighting between convoy members and a new look at the donations that came in fast and furious.
What the hell kind of Barbie world is that reporter living in? Oh, they had infighting. Oh, that doesn't happen anywhere. Not at family get-togethers, not at Christmas, not at Thanksgiving, not on the beach, wherever. And they got donations. Oh my God, the Canadians supported Freedom Convoy? How can that be? There must be a law against that. If there isn't, I'm sure Justin Trudeau should make one.
With more, here's CTV's Natalie Van Roy.
An inquiry into the federal government's use of the Emergencies Act is shedding more light on the darkest moments of the...
If you know how to pick up words and what their real meaning is? Oh yes, it's shedding light on the darkest days. You know, it had to do with infighting and also with donations that the truckers were receiving. I mean, Christ, they could survive on that.
Convoy. Behind the scenes, infighting between organizers.
She told him to leave.
Convoy member Benjamin Dichter testifying that Tamara Lich asked organizer Pat King to not show up at all.
And he was very upset, but he said, fine, if I'm not welcome here, I'll go home. And I said, great, nothing personal, but we can't have that sort of rhetoric here. She said to me, yeah, he said he was going to leave, and then he showed up at the next trucker stop. I'm like, well...
Yes, man, there was infighting going on, and she asked the person to leave, and he did. But he showed up again at the next stop. Well, you know damn well that's her fault. You want to talk about infighting? How about Trudeau and the Liberals with Jody Wilson-Raybould? And how did they treat her? Eventually kicking her out because she didn't go along with Justin Trudeau's nonsense with...
You got to deal with this.
Dichter says he wasn't on the same page as Lich about striking a deal with the city to move vehicles out of residential areas because he said they were partially coordinated by Ontario Premier Doug Ford's former chief of staff. Despite division between convoy members, the movement gained traction worldwide. A report tracking the money donated revealed nearly $25 million came in last winter. On GoFundMe, 89% of donors were from Canada. The various Freedom Convoy campaigns on Give, Send, Go raised more than $13 million with the United States or elsewhere. A report by the Commission shows $1 million was spent by the convoy's organizers. $18 million was refunded to donors, and the rest was either confiscated or put into a fund pending civil court cases. Convoy member James Boder taking the stand Thursday afternoon. He prepared a manifesto to overthrow the government.
We could have facilitated establishing the Canadian Citizens Committee so that we could then sit down in partnership with the Senate and the Governor General and address the unlawful mandates that are happening across this country and come to some resolution.
That memo is important because it essentially suggests the government of Canada should be replaced with the protesters in control. Boder testifying that they withdrew the document after being attacked and defamed over it.
Well, I might as well go on record and say that is also what I'm advocating. Our government isn't working for us, so they should be booted by the side of the road. Yes, both parties. And maybe we have to reimagine a new government for Canada. You do realize that's what they're planning for all of us and our countries, reimagining. And the reset, well, maybe we should reimagine without their input and have a reset without them. Because I tell you, I can see that people are effed off and all they need is a leader. And that leader isn't going to come from government stables. Not anyone that's been, brought up with that BS.
Now, as we've been discussing this morning, it is the financial provisions of this Emergencies Act that are particularly concerning to many. The federal government is saying banks have already started to freeze the accounts of people involved in the protests, and they are warning there will be dire financial consequences to come.
Why the hell is the government of Canada threatening truckers who have been protesting peacefully for 3 weeks with warning of dire consequences?
In the words of Chrystia Freeland, this will bite. What is the
we're going to suck it to him.
Yeah, that's right, Heather. That's exactly what we heard from the Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister yesterday. We know that financial institutions are already moving to restrict access.
Have you ever thought about what it would be like to lose your bank account? You have no access to funds? And did you know that governments can do that, as well as private institutions, even for political reasons? Look at Nigel.
2 months ago, I received a phone call from my bank. Now, bear in mind, I'd been with the same banking group since 1980. I've had my personal account there with that group ever since that date. I ran my business through there when I worked in the city in the 1990s into the noughties, and today I have my personal and business accounts there. But 2 months ago, I get a phone call out of the blue from a personal manager, a new personal manager, not one I'd ever spoken to before, who simply says on a phone call, "We are closing your accounts," that I cannot get a bank account. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that basically you've become a non-person. It's rather like living in Germany or Russia 80 years ago, or perhaps even communist China today. I wonder, are we living in communist China today in this country? Are we akin to communist China? Love your thoughts on that, please. Farage@gbnews.com.
There's a level of admiration I actually have for China. Because their basic dictatorship is allowing them to actually turn their economy around on a dime and say, we need to go green as fast as we need to start, investing in solar. I mean, there is a flexibility that I know Stephen Harper must dream about, of having a dictatorship that he could do everything he wanted, that I find quite interesting.
Whatever the politicking that's going on around the topic and around what's happened to Nigel Farage, and yes, I saw that too. This thing about 9 banks now that have said no to his business. But this is the social credit system coming in by any other name. That's really what people need to be paying attention to. Yes, it's fascinating what's happening to Nigel, and lots of people are gossiping about it and inviting themselves to have all sorts of theories about why it has happened. But much more important is to pay attention to the fact that this is a toe in the door of the social credit system. ESG, 3 letters that everybody better start paying attention to, the environmental, social and governance.
Can you just break down what exactly that means? Because, of course, we saw the Western world, the free world, follow China when it came to lockdown. So what you're saying is that Western governments could also follow the Chinese pattern where, for example, if people didn't cut their carbon emissions, maybe they would lose social credits.
Yeah. The big decisions in people's lives are made not by elected governments, but by unelected transnational corporations. But yes, this is social credit. This is where we will, and if you think it's only going to happen to Nigel Farage or to any other high-profile people, think again, because it means that if you seek to conduct business with your bank and your bank reviews your behaviour, who you've been supporting, what you've been saying, maybe a charity or a fund that you've sought to support. Let's all remember what happened to the truckers supporters in Canada.
Yeah.
If anybody is seen, private or high profile, is seen to transgress in a way that doesn't suit the board of a bank or the board of a transnational corporation, then any one of us could find that we are no longer customers of a bank. And if that then spreads through the system, as it seems to be doing with Nigel, where one bank after another refuses to take your business, then you become, as Nigel has said, a non-person. It's social murder. That banks are taking the step of cutting people off from modern life in this way is something that, if nothing else over the last 3 years has made people sit up and pay attention, then this one really should, because this is social credit. This is, are you a good person in the eyes of the corporations? And if you're not, then they can cut you off literally without a sou.
Cash and cryptocurrency. That's another big thing here that we're watching as well. So the RCMP have been sharing information with these financial institutions on the protesters, their supporters, the organizers here, trying to sort of starve off or choke off access to money, which of course has now been funding this for some 3 weeks. And the government has cited terrorist fundraising laws, now directing financial institutions to target people who have perhaps donated. You were talking about that with David as well, that it's a little murky here, exactly how this is going to be applied to some people. Chrystia Freeland yesterday not saying how many accounts have been frozen, not saying whose accounts have been frozen, but certainly the threat is there looming for people who have been involved with all of this. We also know that some of these crowdfunding sites, such as GoFundMe, are going to have to register with FinTrack, which is the government's financial intelligence unit. We're going to play a little bit more now. This is what we've heard from Chrystia Freeland about these measures.
If your truck is being used in these protests, Your corporate accounts will be frozen. The insurance on your vehicle will be suspended. The consequences are real, and they will bite. It is time for you to go home. And let me also be clear that we will have zero tolerance for the establishment of new blockades or occupations.